I'm John Bishop, Superintendent of Schools, and it's my pleasure to present to you the reopening plan for the Fort Plains Central School District. Let me start by apologizing for some technical difficulties that we've experienced this evening in getting this presentation to you. Be assured that we will have a recording of this live broadcast, and we'll be uploading it to YouTube and the YouTube channel for anyone to view at a later time. I'd like to begin the presentation by recognizing the hard work of all the individuals that have participated in developing our reopening plan. Our administrative staff, our faculty, our supervisors, the central office staff have worked exhaustively to make sure that our reopening plan is a good fit for our school community and is safe for students and employees to be able to return. Again, the presentation is being recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and posted on the school website. Reopening schools, a forum for parents. One of the major focuses in our reopening plan was to stay focused on teaching and learning. And in order to do that, we wanted to ensure that we were maximizing the student-teacher contact time, both during in-person and remote learning. One thing that we experienced during the remote learning was some difficulty and some barriers that students experienced in connecting remotely. Those included access to devices, access to a stable internet connection, and training with how to use the resources. Our plan aims to break down those barriers so that we can ensure a seamless opportunity for students to navigate through a hybrid model that uses both in-person and remote learning as a learning plan for our school district. To begin, the New York State Education Department released their 145-page guidance manual on July 16th. It was titled Recovering, Rebuilding, and Renewing the Spirit of New York Schools. It was a very comprehensive guidance document that asked for school districts to provide 3 reopening scenarios: in-person learning, remote learning, and a hybrid learning model. The hybrid learning model is a combination of in-person and remote learning. To set the record straight, our plan was submitted and subsequently posted on the school website on July the 31st, as directed by the New York State Education Department. The plan that we have adopted is the hybrid or blended approach, and that alternates instruction between in-person and a remote instructional model. We believe that this is a good model based on some of the feedback that we have received. More specifically, alternating between this instructional model allows us not only to meet the mandatory requirements, but to support students in the remote learning experience, where we recognize that this was a challenge during the spring closing. We believe that an every other day in-person and an every other day remote option allows us to help students to navigate what remote learning can and should look like when they're in person with us in school every other day. Providing supports, guidance, using teachable moments, and making sure that we're breaking down those barriers in the event that we do have to move to a more remote learning model, given the guidance of the governor. This is a slide from the most recent parent survey. If school reopens using a blended approach that combines in-person and at-home learning, we receive feedback that approximately 78% of our parents would support a blended approach. And it's one of the predominant driving forces that helped us to design our plan. Our plan involved feedback from several key stakeholders. We began back in June by collecting feedback from faculty and parents. These quote unquote reflections on remote learning offered great insight to the experience that both students and our faculty experienced during the pandemic closing in the springtime. A reopening task force that was comprised of many faculty members used the feedback from both surveys to help flush out what were some common themes. The faculty members, including myself, were impressed by the strength of responses and the thoughtful responses that we received from both parents and faculty, because these responses helped to guide our thinking in terms of what our reopening plan would look like. Additionally, we had some reopening survey to parents more recently, and we've been working with our facility and operation task force to ensure that our buildings are safe for reopening with regard to food service, health and safety protocols, sanitation and hygiene issues, and making sure that we were prepared for transportation. At the building level, there have been a variety of committees and focus groups to ensure that each building structure is well in place and in order to provide support for students as we return to school. One of the silver linings from our surveys includes the fact that many of our colleagues turned into turnkey trainers and helped support us in the navigation towards Google Classroom as a platform for learning. We've now adopted Google Classroom as a platform for from second grade through 12th grade, and we'll be incorporating this year. Again, we also identified through the surveys and through the focus groups that some of the barriers that we experienced in the spring closing were those of communication, access to devices, and having a stable internet connection. And our work over the summer was to put some things in place to break down these barriers and ensure that we had improved and shown growth to make sure that we could address those issues. Some of the guiding principles were beyond adhering to the guidance that was set forth by the many government agencies that were involved in the safe reopening of schools. We placed a high value on teaching and learning, and more importantly, maximizing student-teacher contact time. Again, we believe that an every other day schedule is going to help to support students in navigating what is a difficult to navigate remote learning experience. We believe that having students in front of us every other day and the help of our faculty and our staff and all of our school employees, that they will be able to help best prepare students for navigating that remote experience by using teachable moments to help them to remediate any problems and provide interventions for any concerns. The planning document that we used provided outline under health and safety, nutrition and food service, transportation, attendance, school activities, services for students with special needs, and school safety. That's the basis of this presentation this evening. The parent and faculty feedback, again, identified communication as a barrier, and later in the presentation, we'll talk about what we're doing to break down those barriers. Connectivity to high-speed internet and access to devices were other barriers for learning, and again, we aim to remediate these barriers. Some additional guiding principles was adhering to the guidance, but in adhering to the guidance, we also wanted to make school feel normal again for our students. It is clear and present that the requirements for us to social distance and for students and employees to wear face coverings when we cannot social distance. It is our goal to reduce these in the instructional setting and provide ample opportunity for school to feel normal by removing face coverings in a safe and healthy way. Face coverings will need to be worn at various times during the school, including a requirement to wear them on school buses, in the hallways, in the bathrooms, and anywhere that a 6-foot social distance cannot be maintained. Again, in order to make school feel normal again, we wanted to break down these barriers, and we believe that our instructional program does exactly that. Health and hygiene. Under health and hygiene, we have tried to reduce class sizes to the best of our ability. We have also provided social distancing so that our students, and we can manage traffic flow so that students have greater opportunity to move through the building without having cross contact in the hallways. We're working to stagger dismissals and transition times between classes in order to help students to have less congestion in the hallways. Prior to the school day, all of our employees will be required to participate and conduct a self-health screening. That screening will answer 4 questions that include a temperature check, that include whether or not you have traveled to a COVID hotspot that has been designated by Governor Cuomo, and or been in contact or tested positive with COVID-19. We're also, per the guidance, strongly recommending parents to do the same with their children at home. We'll provide these questions for you and let you know what the signs and symptoms of this illness are. We're asking that you keep any sick children home from school in order to reduce any contamination in the school environment for our employees and for the benefit of all of our students in the learning environment. As a precaution, we'll also be providing temperature checks for all of our students each and every school day. Beyond that, we're required to adhere to all of the protocols that are released by the State Department in terms of isolating sick individuals. Other health and hygiene considerations have to do with increasing the cleaning and disinfecting of our school environment. We've increased the number of times our bathrooms will be cleaned during the day. And at this time, we're looking to clean them each and every hour. We're limiting our facilities and our buildings after hours and not at this point in time having any outside groups, because the cleaning protocols will be increased for our evening cleaning shift. And we need to make sure that our building is safe and sanitary for the next school day. Other contact areas, railings, doorknobs, things of that nature, will be cleaned more frequently throughout the school day. Additionally, with regard to health and hygiene, there is a requirement for us to make sure that we are training students to maintain healthy hygiene habits. That includes washing hands with soap and water, using hand sanitizer if it's permissible, and additional measures to reduce the spread of the virus or the illness. We're required to support these efforts with contact tracing, and if an employee or a student becomes ill and displays symptoms of COVID, they'll be isolated from others in our isolation rooms, and we're required to report these incidents to the health department. Other requirements include wearing face coverings on school buses or any time that we cannot maintain that safe social boundary. Our food and nutrition plan is focused on providing hot meals each and every day while students are in school. Upon arrival, students will be provided a grab-and-go breakfast. And again, we'd like to be able to provide a hot meal option when students are in school each and every day. At the conclusion of the in-person day, the next day's meals, breakfast and lunch, will be sent home with students for the remote learning day. If students are absent from school on that day, a parent or guardian can come to the high school kiosk in order to pick up that individual's meals for that day. In regard to transportation, our buses will follow the regular routes to pick up students. Though be it, we will have far less students and the ability to seat them in every other row and alternate between windows and aisles to keep students and maintain a safe social distance. That being said, we are still required on the bus to have students and employees wear masks throughout their entire ride. We're incorporating additional cleaning measures to sanitize our buses between each and every run. And we are making sure that any high contact area on those buses, the tops of seats, are cleaned more thoroughly each and every time. Students who live in the same household with other family members will be assigned to sit together because they're in the same household. Otherwise, other students will be placed in assigned seats in order to maintain the accurate kind of seating requirements that we've been asked to maintain. Attendance in school. Attendance for this reopening plan will be taken on a daily basis, regardless of whether a student is in person or at home learning in the remote instructional model. We are required to have substantive daily contact between teachers and students, and our plan accounts for that. The message was clear from the New York State Education Department. They indicated that parents and school staff did an excellent job of responding to the emergency pandemic and the sudden shift to remote learning. But one thing was missed in terms of the accountability for attendance. So therefore, we will need to take attendance on a day-to-day basis for both the remote and the in-person model. And we'll need to follow up when absenteeism becomes an issue, according to the Board of Education policy and the guidelines set forth by the New York State Education Department. There is no decision whether extracurricular clubs and activities will go on yet. We're trying to determine the feasibility of operating these clubs in a safe manner by respecting social distancing parameters and providing opportunities for our buildings to be appropriately cleaned and sanitized after hours. In addition to that, we have not heard anything from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association regarding fall sports yet. The soonest that fall sports would begin was September 21st. We anticipate announcement in the coming weeks in terms of what that fall season will look like, if that season happens at all. I can assure you that the New York State Public High School Athletic Association and the athletic directors, in concert with Section 2, have an alternate plan in place for interscholastic sports. They have a shortened and abbreviated season and schedule to conduct all athletic seasons between the month of January and the end of the school year. Winter sports would happen in the month of January and February, followed by fall sports, followed by spring sports. Again, we're continuing to wait for announcements on what the sports and interscholastic seasons would look like, and we'll continue to examine the feasibility of offering extracurricular clubs and activities based on space and health and safety. We are committed to providing students for services with disabilities. In-person instruction is our highest priority, Our highest priority in this regard is to meet the diverse learning needs of all of the students that are involved in this type of instruction. Meaningful parent engagement will be involved in the CSE planning process, and attending daily to ensure that all of the needs are being supported is our highest priority. Based on the current New York State Education and Department of Health guidance, school districts are not required to provide alternatives to their designated plans unless there's a valid medical concern that's supported by the Department of Health guidance. If there is a valid medical concern, parents should contact the administration and will be prepared to submit a notice from a healthcare provider as to what the medical condition is. We will absolutely work with those families individually to make sure that we can address those needs in accordance with the guidance that we receive. Communication. Communication is an area that was identified as a barrier for learning back in the springtime. To begin, our teachers and faculty had a difficult time connecting with students via Google Classroom. That was due in large to the fact that students didn't have emails at that point in time. We have since remedied that, and we'll be providing students with emails in alignment with the Google Education Suite and the Google Classroom experience. As mentioned, Google Classroom will be a standardized platform for learning, grades 2 through 12. In addition to that, our employees are navigating to a Gmail system so that we have a system-wide use of our educator suite that's provided by the Google resources. We'll continue to use the website, and for the time being, we'll continue to use Remind in order to push out notifications to our families. In a meeting with our communication specialist, there was a concern that Remind is not a useful tool to get to all of our families. So we're also adopting a program called Parent Square. Parent Square has many layers to it, and it provides parents with an opportunity to choose the appropriate communication vehicle for them, including text message, phone call, or email. Parent Square is a communication device that marries and merges information with our student management system, so we can be assured that the information that we're putting out is getting to all of our families that are connected to our student management system. We're really excited about this Parent Square program because it allows our teachers to have direct access to their students in their class, similar to what a Classroom Dojo might provide. It also allows other departments like transportation to be able to communicate information if students on a particular bus was running late due to a traffic accident or an impediment in the road or a snow emergency. So we can get very granular with the information that we're getting out. And again, we believe it's going to be a useful tool because it's going to it's going to merge all of the information with our communication, our student management system. Connectivity for students and families was also identified as a barrier. We're therefore providing one-to-one access for all of our students. Students in our primary grades will receive an iPad. Students in grades 2 through 12 will receive a Google Chromebook. Some students in the upper grades will actually receive a laptop because that device will support some more technical kinds of programs like AutoCAD and other programs that are going to be used for some of the classrooms like technology. We also, again, have systematized our learning platforms to address the needs and the feedback that have been provided by our families and make sure that you can support your children at home by reducing the number of web apps that you may have been exposed to in the springtime. Again, this was feedback that we received in our parent surveys, and what we're trying to do is make sure that Our remote learning options are options that are much more manageable and easy to navigate from a student and family perspective. And systematizing these learning platforms is a really good first step to accomplish that. This was some of the feedback that we received in the initial end of the year survey in terms of whether or not children are sharing devices. And again, supports the reason why we would go to a one-to-one device access so that students in the same household can be on a remote learning platform at the same time. Some of the questions that we received. Some of the questions that we received. Will there be band, chorus, and athletics? We are continuing to evaluate these programs based on social distancing requirements and guidance from New York State. Additional questions that we received included, how will students be educated on how to follow infection control measures? Some of the things that we need to do in this regard, again, are adhering to the guidance from the New York State Department of Health. We have increased the amount of signs. We've increased our knowledge of the signs and symptoms of identifying illness. And we'll also be putting into place some specific protocols to make sure that on a day-to-day basis, we're talking with our students about good hygiene, good and healthy hygiene, and identifying what those symptoms are. Will visitors and volunteers be able to access the school? Out of an abundance of caution, the district has modified the visitor policy. All visitors will be admitted by appointment only and must be screened before entering the building. They will need to wear face coverings and follow all of the health and safety protocols that are evident for us in school. If a staff or student tests positive for COVID-19, how will parents be informed? This is a great question to address in this type of a format. The school district is required to contact public health when they receive confirmation of a positive case. As a district, we will issue the communication that is provided by the Department of Health to all families that there has been a positive case here at our school. That being said, we must be sensitive and adhere to all laws pertaining to confidentiality. So therefore, similar to a notice that might come home for an outbreak of the flu, the Public Health Department will be providing us with guidance on the communication letters, and then they will be responsible for following up with regard to contact tracing and notification if your child has been exposed to anyone who had positively tested for COVID-19. How will students be educated on how to follow infection control measures? We have protocols in place to train on all of the safety protocols, including how to properly wash hands, respiratory hygiene, how to properly remove and put on masks. They will in turn give students age-appropriate training during the school day and explain these safety expectations. There will be signs posted throughout the buildings and will ensure that there are ample opportunities for hand washing and in following healthy and safe hygiene habits. How will the district handle non-compliant staff and students? Another great question. Our requirements are set forth by the Department of Health and the New York State Education Department. It's not an option that we have to ignore these requirements. We have to have plans in place to make sure that we're addressing them. We do have a code of conduct in place, and anyone who is not adhering to this guidance would be considered to be non-compliant. That being said, what we're hoping is that our plan provides enough opportunities for students to feel, quote unquote, normal in the learning space, and that there's ample opportunity to remove the face covering and have school feel normal again. In order to do that, we need to maintain a safe social distance and reduce the traffic flow so that we can have opportunities for students to be able to remove face coverings. We're hoping that the normal experience of school will help students to feel less inclined to ignore the safety protocols and wear the face covering in those common areas like hallways, the buses, or if they were waiting in line to get their cafeteria meals. Again, we want to take a positive approach and support this as a teachable moment so that we can ensure the safety of all students and make sure that we're maintaining health and safety by removing our mask during the instructional times when it's safe and appropriate to do that. We have some additional forums that are scheduled. Harry Hoag's forum is going to be on Monday, the 17th. That's hosted by the principal. The junior senior high school is on Tuesday, the 18th, and that'll be hosted by Principal Larrabee. And on Thursday, August 20th, I will have another forum hosted by myself. Thank you again for taking the time to participate. And again, this is being recorded live, and it will be posted as soon as possible on the school district website. Have a good evening.